I'm here today because over the years, well, over more than 30 years, I've regularly put myself up for election because that's how we do things. We have elections. We have up to set periods of time, and we judge those we voted for, whether we think they've done well or badly, and we have the ability to remove them. In fact, it was, if anything, the key motive behind voting for Brexit. 4 years ago, on the first Thursday in May, we had a big set of county council elections. 20 million people were eligible to vote, and it was a massive landslide for the Conservative Party. Boris Johnson was absolutely on the highs. They even managed to win the Hartlepool by-election on the same day. But a lot has changed since then. And not the usual ping-pong that perhaps we've seen mostly since 1918, of it being Labour, Tory, Labour, Tory. There is something of a difference, a change in the political weather, if you may. So I'm standing here today to say we think it is completely outrageous. In fact, despite the fact we're a very happy, optimistic, forward-looking party, we are blimmin' angry this afternoon that 5.5 million people in this country are being denied their vote on May the 1st this year. And we've got counties like Surrey and East Sussex and West Sussex and Suffolk and Hampshire where elections have been cancelled. Where we are particularly aggrieved is in Norfolk, where we did win the seat of Great Yarmouth. Even under first past the post, we still run the seat of Great Yarmouth in the general election. And in Essex, where James McMurdoch and I both managed to win seats in Parliament, where we came second in 5 of the constituencies, and where the opinion polls now put us as favourites to win Essex County Council. But the voters in Essex and Norfolk and Sussex and Hampshire and the Isle of Wight and Thurrock and Suffolk and Norfolk, they will be denied the opportunity to vote on May the 1st this year. The elections are cancelled. Now, I thought that only dictators cancelled elections, but no, this is the connivance of a now terrified Labour Party, and boy, didn't we see that today at Prime Minister's questions. And I was being shouted down from all sides. It was almost like old days in the European Parliament. I was thoroughly enjoying myself. And Conservative-led councils, who of course want to keep their money rolling for at least another couple of years. How long the cancellations last, whether it's 1 year or 2 years or more, we don't know. What we do know is that the reorganisation of local government is going to take up to 3 years to complete. And given that a term for a county councillor is 4 years, there is absolutely no justification for cancelling the elections of 5.5 million people other than the cowardice of the existing political class. And that's why we've launched our petition on this, which nearly 250,000 people have signed already. We are blimmin' angry. This is wrong. The political weather has changed in local government over the course of the last 4 years, and people deserve to have a say. So we'll fight hard and campaign in the areas that are still happening. There are 6 mayoralties being contested as well on the same day. We've announced 1 candidate so far. The candidate for Hull will be announced in a couple of weeks' time, and the rest will follow in good time. We will put up a candidate in every single district that is up in the unitaries and the counties that are fighting on May the 1st. We'll fight all 6 of the mayoralties, and I believe that what will happen on May the 1st is you'll see the opinion polls, which some could say are theoretical, and you'll see that, I think, come into practice. I'm also aware that we've perhaps been leading the way on the debate over the surrender of the sovereignty of the Chagos Islands. I'm aware that the Labour Party suddenly think we want to charge everybody £50,000 for a GP appointment, and we'll answer that. I'm also aware, having made this statement this afternoon, of our intent and our upset at what's happening to 5.5 million people, that unlike Kemi Badenoch or Sir Keir Starmer, Zia and I, who are at the helm of running this party, our MPs who are in the front row, are not afraid to have a press conference where any of you, whether you're considered to be favourable media or unfavourable media, have the chance to ask any question you want. So let it commence, but I'll make it very, very clear that we do not think that elections being cancelled is the right thing 4 years on from a Conservative landslide. The two parties have colluded so that people can keep paid jobs for another couple of years. It's wrong at every level, and I certainly know that in the counties affected, the vast majority of people will agree with us. Thank you.
Is it really the best use of public cash to hold elections for authorities that are about to be abolished?
Given that it's going to take 3 years for the reorganisations to be in place, and that is 75% of the lifetime of the next term of local councils, and given that these radical changes are happening without any public consultation whatsoever, and by the way, I've got severe reservations about small, more rural district councils being swallowed up by unitaries that will be governed by the bigger towns or bigger cities, then yes, absolutely. It is ludicrous that we should extend the term, and in many cases on county councils, particularly cabinet, people who are quite well paid from the public purse. It is absolutely ludicrous that we don't take a temperature test of where public opinion is and have an open debate and consultation about local government. I mean, do people actually want their local district council to be abolished? Do people think that a mayor going over 3, maybe even 5 unitaries in Essex is the right thing? And let's be clear, the Labour manifesto was not explicit in any way about these changes. So yes, let's make the reorganisation of local government, and by the way, we're talking now about elderly care. We're talking now about children with disabilities. We're talking about potholes. And I'm not joking, actually something that affects the lives of millions of people. County councils have big budgets. County councils matter. County councils affect the daily lives of, 20 million people in the case of this set of elections. Yes, we should have new councillors, fresh open debate about these so-called reforms or changes. There is no justification for cancelling these elections whatsoever, other than sheer cowardice of what reform might do to them in those campaigns.
Yes, please, the gentleman there.
Thank you. Hugo Jai from the iPaper. Nigel, you mentioned planning to stand candidates in every district council. Does that mean standing candidates in every single seat that is going up for election, every single individual council seat? Do you know roughly how many people that would be and how many you've got in place already of those? So
the original offering was for 2,216 seats to be up on May the 1st. Obviously, we didn't know until lunchtime today which ones have been cancelled. So I don't have the exact, to the nearest sort of 10 calculation, but it means us putting up 1,500 candidates. And I am absolutely promising, the chairman might wince, but I'm absolutely promising that we will put up a candidate in every single district that is up, because we think that Reform Now is the opposition in this country to the Labour Party. The Conservatives have self-surrendered that position by their own performance and behaviour. We want everybody to have the vote, the chance, the opportunity to vote for us. So yes.
Yeah, I would just add to that, far from wincing, that is, as chairman, I'll tell you, that is what we are here to do. As if we want to be the next party of government in the United Kingdom, the least we could do is ensure that every British person who is going to the ballot box has a Reform candidate to vote for. And to put that achievement in context, and we've been working incredibly hard. By the way, nobody more so than Nigel. I think it's really important to say that I know Nigel's this consummate performer in front of the media and has got this huge social media following, but I'll tell you, the majority of his time since I've become chairman, the majority of time since the general election, he has put into doing all the boring but incredibly important stuff if you actually want to win elections in a first-past-the-post system. So as Nigel said, just over 2,200 seats were due to be up in May. That is now as a result of the appalling cancellations that have been announced today. It's going to be about 1,600. In May last year, Reform UK stood in 7% of the seats that were up, and that was without a vetting process, as all of you will know. And so, so now we have while it will not be perfect, the most thorough vetting process of any party. I think I'd say that with confidence and conviction, certainly at the council level. And we will stand, I'll tell you as chairman, we will stand in every single one of those 1,600 seats. It's critically important that we give every single citizen of the United Kingdom eligible to vote the chance to vote for a Reform candidate in May. Yeah, please.
Thank you. I'm going to ask on a different topic, if that's okay. Donald Trump says he wants to take over Gaza and turn it into the Riviera of the Middle East. Do you agree?
I love ambition. The thought of a wealthy, wonderful, thriving place with well-paid jobs, casinos, nightlife. I mean, it sounds very appealing to me. I'm not here to answer on behalf of everything that the Trump administration has to say. What I will say is he's got off to the most extraordinary start as US president. And promises made, promises kept, quite extraordinary. We do realise that after 2029, we will not quite have the same presidential powers that the president of the USA has. So without being specific on Gaza, I would just say I think he's off to the most incredible start. You've witnessed international brinkmanship on a level perhaps never seen before. And the surrender after surrender that you get, whether it's from Canada or South American countries, Panama, you name it, is amazing. He views tariffs, particularly tariffs, as a transactional tool. Does it amazingly effectively. He can go back to the American people and say, I've got a better deal, I've put you first. The worry, of course, is that if the Chagos deal continues, and when the Americans wake up to the lies they've been told by Jonathan Powell, that we'll be included in a tariff regime that comes from the European Union. And I've got a feeling that whilst tariffs were used as a negotiating tool with Canada and Mexico, I've got a funny feeling that the tariffs that come from the European Union are intended to stick. And we will find ourselves caught in that regime if they think we've betrayed not just our national interest, not just their national interest, but the interest of the Western world against the ever-increasing naval encroachment of China. China.
Yes, please.
Thank you very much. Harry Hilton, ITV. On local elections, I think you've both said before that you were hoping to win hundreds of council seats at these upcoming local elections. How does the cancellation of some of these elections hamper your ability to demonstrate the progress that you say you've made? And secondly, if I may, on Prevent, the review into the Prevent loadings after Southport is out today, and it says that some individuals made the wrong subjective decisions. Do you think individuals involved in that should lose their jobs over the failings in that case? Okay, as far as the elections are concerned, they are cancelling elections in some of the counties in which we'd expected to do the very, very best. Essex being, in a sense, number one on our hit list. Norfolk being not very far behind. And I'm not knocking our ability in Surrey or West Sussex or whatever it may be, I'm not. But certainly in Essex and Norfolk, I think we have every right to feel seriously aggrieved. As I say, our internal polling shows we're ahead in Essex, with maybe even a chance, of winning enough seats to certainly be in a governing or coalition governing position in that county. So we are really angry about this. But also, as I say, I've made the point already, every 4 years, people are entitled to vote for who runs their local council. People are also entitled to be consulted about whether to get rid of the district. I mean, for example, tendering. I'm one of the MPs, along with Sir Bernard Jenkin, for tendering. Yeah, we've got Clacton, but Clacton's a town. Most of it is villages, small towns, and rural. And yet we're going to be dragged in to a unitary authority where a big city, a big populace will dominate the debate. So it'll be an urban debate
that dominates a rural community. So the idea this is devolution, that somehow is bringing power closer to the people, actually will operate in reverse. So I just think from every angle that we look at this, what is happening today is wrong. It's not been discussed. It's not been debated. But why not make it part of the election campaign running up to May the 1st, where different parties, Labour can stand and say, look, this is what we want to do. We can stand saying we don't agree with it. And the Tories can stand pretending they've got a foot in both camps. And that's pretty much where we are in British politics with most debates. No, I'm absolutely, this damages us. This decision damages us in terms of how we can perform on May the 1st. It's not to say we can't perform well. On Southport, I had left the House of Commons by the time the statement came, but Richard Tice, Deputy Leader, was there and will answer that.
Thank you. Yes, the Security Minister made a statement in the House of Commons, which I responded to, about the Prevent Learning Review. And the reality is that what it has shown is that multiple failures, frankly, of the most negligent kind that we could conceive, have been made by Prevent. And I think the British people want to know, frankly, that people are going to be held to account. Because if those failures had not taken place, then the Southport killer would have been deemed a potential terrorist, and that Southport horror would not have happened. And so I said to the Minister, given that the Prevent Learning Review specifically says that the killer...
Richard, I'm so sorry. We've got a live stream.
Sorry. The killer was susceptible to be drawn into terrorism. In other words, the review says he was a terrorist. And yet, the government refused to call it a terror incident. He has been convicted under the Terrorism Act, and yet the government still won't actually say it was a terror incident. And I think the British people just want the honest truth.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you. Yes, please.
Hi, Christian Calgie, Daily Express. One forecast by Electoral Calculus has suggested Reform may win about 275 seats in the local elections. Does that sound about right to you, or are you more ambitious than that? And in the areas that the local elections are going ahead, what's your pitch? What are Reform councillors' policies? Are they NIMBYs? Are they YIMBYs? Do you commit to opposing council tax rises? What can local voters actually expect from Reform councillors?
Okay, obviously we've got to recalculate our expectations. You know, I'd said a couple of times that a minimum baseline for us in these local elections coming up on May the 1st, a minimum baseline was winning 200 seats. All right? So if electoral calculus say we were on for 275, I was in roughly the right ballpark. You might revise that down by 25%, I don't know. Clearly, some of our best, strongest areas have been taken out, but there are still others in which we're going to be highly competitive. As Zia said, you know, we're vetting candidates to a level and a standard that no other party in British politics has ever gone to for local elections. You know, we've taken the messages from the failures of July the 4th last year very, very seriously. Doesn't mean we're going to woke out people with opinions. We just don't want the extremes. It's as simple as that. So look, let's wait and see. Let's wait and see what we can get. In terms of policy, you're going to be very surprised. You're going to be very surprised. We've literally been putting in thousands and thousands of FOIs up and down the country for some months. You are not looking at any previous political party that I led. You know, I mean, albeit they were very valiant and also incredibly successful. This is a completely different mindset. We are getting to the bottom of waste at local government. We're getting to the bottom of overpay of too many officials at local government. We are also going to shock you and surprise you when we show you some of the contracts that have been signed, and I'm talking 5 and 10-year contracts that have been signed by existing county councils for essential services that have been delivered very, very badly. And we're going to show you how reform can fix it. We're going to show you how we can give better value for money for council taxpayers. We're going to show you how at local government we can do things better. And if we get that right, then we'll be able to show you in 2028, 2029, how we can do that at a national level. This is not a flippant campaign. We've spent 6 months on this. And as Zia says, most of the biggest job I've had over the course of the last 7 months has been behind the scenes, working with Zia and others, getting us match fit, organised, prepared, planned, ready to do this. May the 1st for us, it really is. In a sense, July the 4th was our first outing. We were like the rookies, going out on a big scale, and we got a handful elected and 4 million votes, and that was about what I thought we could achieve. We were held back by some people that shouldn't be part of us. That's never going to happen again. And I want to be clear, we're not messing about. We intend to win the next general election. And you can laugh if you like, but I tell you what, people have laughed at me before.
Yeah, Anna.
Anna Gross from the FT. You said that you were going to hand over ownership of your party to your members, but Companies House at the moment says that Nigel still owns more than 75%.
I know.
Can you just give us an update on when that's going to happen and what the process is at the moment?
Anna, you are so right. You are so right. I still have this massive liability around my neck. If it all gets wrong or we get sued for millions, it's me that picks up the bill. There's nobody keener to get rid of the ownership of the party than me. Zia will update you.
So one of the things about doing things professionally is actually doing things properly. And according to our lawyers, what we are doing in terms of converting a company limited by shares into a company limited by guarantee of an organisation of this scale is without precedent. That's what our lawyers tell me, and I have no reason to doubt that. So we're doing this properly. I would argue nobody moves faster in British politics than Reform UK, but we've been doing it properly. And the good news is, as a result of all of that hard work, Anna, we will have something to announce within the next 7 days with regards to that. Yes, please.
Thanks very much. Gary Given, Channel 4 News. Some people might be scratching their heads a bit that there's a conspiracy theory in your mind that Labour wanted to frustrate a bunch of local elections, which they might have quite enjoyed watching, you and the Tories scrapping. That's what the narrative looked like being. I don't quite understand. Can you explain how that is right? And I think one of Calgary's questions was where you might place yourself in the growth agenda, YIMBY, NIMBY, or are you going to play it differently in different seats, as some parties...
You mean the Lib Dems, obviously, who can play all ends against the middle. Look, actually, even in those Tory-held counties, Labour still have seats, and they fear being completely wiped. So I think Angela Rayner was coming under pressure over the course of the last few days, indeed from Labour existing councillors and activists as well. You're right, the Conservatives had more to lose. Look, we're not the Lib Dems. We're not the Lib Dems. We understand that mass immigration on a scale never seen in the history of these islands, an increase of 10 million in the last 20 years, sanctioned by both Labour and even more by the Conservative Party, means we have to build houses. There is no escaping that. And we'll be honest about that with the electorate in every single division in which we stand. These parties have guaranteed we have to build far more houses in your backyard than you wanted. But given that, what we've got to do is find a way in which we do it that actually makes sense. And there is so much talk about affordable housing. And almost none of what is commissioned by the big housing companies is actually affordable housing. And that's the truth of it. When the social housing stock is equally under pressure, and we will, as the election proceeds, be giving you the figures for how much of our social housing stock is being used by people who were not born in this country, whose families have never paid taxes, never served, never been a part of it. All of that will come out over the course of this campaign. We cannot afford to be NIMBYs. But that's not to say that we can't preserve the Greenbelt. And I do think on the outskirts of our big cities, just to extend urban sprawl forever and ever would be a mistake. So you'll hear a lot more from us on that. We know that houses need to be built. But we also know that if the Labour government succeeds in building 1.5 million houses, that will not even be enough for net migration into this country during the lifetime of this Parliament. So let's get real about some of these debates, and I promise you that we will.
Yeah, I would just add to that, to Nigel's final point there, that every time I was on BBC Politics Live just a couple of weeks ago, and all the debate was about the supply and the planning issues. And as Nigel says, of course, we've got to build more homes. But there's never any discussion from the Tories, because they had 14 years of doing the opposite of this, and obviously Labour now, never discussion of the demand issues. As Nigel says, even if you take the ONS's own forecasts, the ONS forecasts, there's going to be 3 to 4 times as many people arriving here on a net basis as new homes will be built. And by the way, this is the ONS on their forecasts. If you look at the ONS prints for previous historical data, remember they upgraded the number for last year, their historical print, by 20% to 1 million people in the year before general election. So that number we just described, the numbers we're talking about here, Nigel's talking about, are going to be wrong by orders of magnitude. So this is a really important point. We need to build more homes, but there is no way we're going to solve all of the infrastructure problems in this country, whether it's house building, whether it's the NHS, whether it's prison space, unless we freeze migration. Okay, we've got time for 2 more. Yes, please, on the corner.
Thank you, Catherine Forster, GB News. You've said you're going to stand 1,500 candidates. How many of those do you already have selected now? And also, the other day, Zia Yusuf said, President Trump has literally gotten more done in 14 days than the Tories did in 14 years. Would we see echoes of what's happening in the States if you form the next government? Thank you.
Well, how on earth is Zia wrong in saying that? I mean, the presidential orders, the pens into the audience, amazing. It clearly would be harder for us. But Catherine, you're running ahead, a long, long way. 4 years or so to the next election is a very, very long time. We know, and we're realistic, that if we were to get to that position, the battle that we would have, nay war, with the civil service and the left-wing teachers' unions, these would be very, very tough things. And we know that, and we understand that. They'd be epic fights. We wouldn't have the presidential powers that an American president has, or indeed, believe it or not, given how weak he is, a French president has either. We understand that, but we also know that the only way that you win these battles is to have a united party on the backbenches behind a front bench. A party that is based on mission, as opposed to a party that is based on career. And if you look at the current makeup of the House of Commons, I'm not sure any of them are even employable. Maybe the odd one here or there, but some of the very odd creatures getting up today asking questions in PMQs. You wouldn't employ them. You wouldn't go for a drink with them. They're 2 very good markers in my view. We've got very, very low grade politics. And what we've got to do at the next general election is put up 651 people who've got a huge range of backgrounds. Everything from the charity sector to the trade union movement to entrepreneurs to the army. And I hope the one thing a reform government will do is increase the average age of MPs by at least 10 to 15 years. We want people in Parliament that have actually lived real lives, have got proper experience of the world before becoming legislators. Frankly, what we're seeing there today, in many cases, is an absolute farce.
Yeah, to that point, I will also say, as we are headed towards, obviously, the May elections, and then we have Wales and Scotland next year, we'll have over 10,000 council seats up, and as we head towards the general election, one thing we are all aware of, myself, Nigel, obviously, our amazing MPs, is that, frankly, half of our policy challenge is what the right prescription is, And frankly, at this stage, God knows what that is, given the rate at which, unfortunately, this country is declining under this dystopian Starmer government. But frankly, half, at least, arguably more than half, is how we actually get that agenda implemented, as Nigel says. So you can be assured by the time we get to the next general election, we will, just like President Trump, huge contrast, right, compared to the last time he came to power. This time they basically self-funded their own, their own transition team. And that was why he was able to get so much done in such a short period of time. And while there is no such thing as an executive order in the United Kingdom, that can cut both ways, because, the swipe of a pen of Trump today could potentially be undone by a president in the future. In the end, what matters is we do right by the British people. So we're going to be really clear with the citizens of the United Kingdom about what our policy agenda is. It's going to be pretty transformative by the time we come to power in 2029, at the time of the next general election. And we're working incredibly hard, and we're building teams to be able to ensure that we are able to actually implement that agenda, whether it's ensuring that the civil servants do the things that we need them to do, whether that's ensuring that the country, as Nigel alluded to at the beginning of this press conference, stands tall ultimately as an AI superpower in what is ultimately now an AI arms race. Similarly, ensuring that our policies, the things that British people literally voted for, are not struck down by other powers inside the United Kingdom. Nigel has campaigned for decades on the sovereignty of the British people and their ability to vote out people who do not represent the interests of the British people.
Denied today to 5.5 million people.
Indeed, exactly that. And that's why we're here today. Okay, one last question. Yeah.
Thanks. Peter Mandelson, I think, is finally making it to Washington. So I wondered, Nigel, have you got any advice for him, or has he asked for any advice in the past few weeks? And then secondly, Rupert Lowe, your colleague, has said the Tories need to remove Lib Dem MPs before Reform would consider a non-aggression pact. Is that a view you share?
Well, the Lib Dem MPs are in the majority in the Conservative Party, as far as I can see. I mean, I've never met a more conceited, arrogant bunch of human beings in my life. They are so stuck up, stuffed up. They're quite extraordinary. And if that's what the Conservative Party is, no wonder they're in such terminal decline. Peter Mandelson. So I got to know Mandelson, of course, because he was EU Trade Commissioner for 5 years, going back 15, 20 years. Master of his brief, no question about that. Absolutely brilliant on the detail. One of the great globalists, no question about that. Done his absolute best to eradicate the nation state over the years. Great mates with Deripaska and all the big billionaires who benefit from corporate rules and law. Look, if you said to me, Peter Mandelson or Cathy Ashton, put your hands up, I'd choose Mandelson, I suppose. Is he the right man to be our ambassador in Washington? Well, you know what? The amount of importance or access he gets will depend on Team Trump and how much they want to deal with him. I think he might find it difficult to get as much access as he wants, because he's kind of just not Donald Trump's kind of guy. But I wouldn't share with you any private conversations we might or might not have had, because I'm much too discreet for that. But if he wants my help in any way at all, I would give it, even though half my party would hate me, but I would give it, because it is in my national interest that we have as good of relations between the UK and US government as we can have. But I want to just reiterate that so much of this depends on Chagos, far more than any of you are giving credit for. Jonathan Powell, our National Security Advisor, is a proper old Blairite smoothie, all right? He's been going around DC, meeting incoming cabinet ministers, meeting senior advisors, telling them that we have no option but to give up the sovereignty of the Chagos Islands. And given that dire position, and given how important Diego Garcia is, that what they've done is the best possible salvage job of a difficult situation. And Powell has been going around DC making that argument, and they've been believing him. One, because he is sort of rather charming and British, you know, and that sort of quite often works in the USA. And secondly, because they've got other priorities. Gaza was asked about earlier, the new Riviera, the ending the Ukraine war, the trade disputes with Mexico, with China, with Canada, with whatever. So Diego Garcia is low down the list of American priorities. But let me promise you, and I was speaking into the early hours of this morning with senior figures in the incoming administration. You know, when you actually tell them, no, this was an ICJ judgment which has no force of law over Commonwealth countries whatsoever. It is merely advisory, and it's a court that is so utterly disrespected that America is not even a member of it. When you explain that bit, the scales begin to fall from the eyes. And I felt I was making more progress last night on this than I've made perhaps at any point over the course of the last few weeks. So you've had the initial reservations from Marco Rubio, Mike Waltz, others. But I promise you, if this gets rushed through in the next 10, 12 days, forced through Parliament with a massive parliamentary majority, forget Peter Mandelson, he won't even matter. Forget the special relationship. Look forward to tariffs being put on the United Kingdom as they are with the rest of the European Union. And I firmly believe that the threatened tariffs with Mexico and Canada were part of a negotiation. The tariffs with the EU are meant to be. And we will find ourselves part of that regime. We have lied again and again and again to the incoming American administration, and they will wake up to this, I promise you.